Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Talk Bridal to Me. I am Anna Muma, a Pacific Northwest makeup artist here in Washington State, and I am here with Jessica English of Red Letter Event Planning. She has been with the company for about 10 years and is amazing at what she does.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So to start off, what does red letter mean?
That's a good question. So historically, on the Roman calendar, days of significance or importance were marked in red. And we kind of still do that today when you mark on your calendar. Maybe you use a different color or you circle the date. And so we want to be able to bring our clients their red letter day. We want to help mark their day of importance. So it kind of has a historical undertone and just means a day of significance or of great importance.
I love that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
That is so fun. I know for me, just on my calendar, like when I have a bride and this is her day, like it is marked in highlighter, in pen,
all of the things,
the doctor appointment. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
It is fun. How did you get started in the industry?
So I went to school for journalism, did my undergrad at Boise State, and that kind of segued into public relations. And I really liked PR, really enjoyed kind of the corporate aspect that came with that. And so started to get involved in corporate event planning, worked for a small independent PR firm, did some bigger, large corporation contracts, things like that. And just really liked how all the pieces would come together with event planning.
Yeah.
So when we moved to the area, my husband's from North Idaho. I grew up in Boise. So when we moved up north about 10, 11 years ago, I wanted to make the shift to more predominantly weddings than corporate stuff. I liked the appeal that the stakes were higher. The emotional investment was more substantial. Just more pressure. I do well with pressure. And so that was kind of how I shifted into the wedding industry. So we still do some corporate stuff, but predominantly weddings.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's fun.
That is really fun. I feel like for me, even just as a makeup artist, there's a lot that goes into just that little piece of the day. So I can imagine taking on an entire wedding is such a higher stake.
It is for sure. And I mean, most people go into this thinking that they're only going to have one wedding. Hopefully that is true.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure that goes on that day. Whether you're, I'm a laid back bride, or no, I am more type A, inevitably it is a big emotional investment as well as financial, mental, emotional, et cetera. So we like being a part of that.
Absolutely. About how many hours would you say that you put into a wedding when it goes into wedding planning? What is the average time that it takes?
Great question. And as a responsible business owner, I should know the answer to that. As a person with a poor work-life balance, I don't track those hours very well. I mean, easily in the hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't give you an exact number because I'm...
Yeah, that's okay.
Bad at that.
I feel like I get a lot of brides who, especially when they don't have wedding planners, I'm like, how's the wedding planning going? And they're like, it's either it's going really well or they're stressed.
Yeah.
And it just depends on who they are as a person and how much they've done in the forefront. I know when my husband and I got engaged, we got engaged in the month of May and our wedding was in August. And we did it on the fly.
Yeah.
We had $4,000. We're like, we're doing it. It was 12 years ago. We made it happen. It was in a friend's backyard and it was great.
Yeah.
But especially when you have a venue and a caterer and all these pieces that are coming together. I mean, for our wedding, we had our church do a potluck. And so it was not this big production. It was like, let's just get some chairs and an arbor from Spokane.
Make it happen. Yeah.
Let's make it happen. But I often find that my brides are the type that are at the Davenport, are at Schweitzer, are at these bigger events, are at the Coeur d'Alene Resort. And there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I always tell my clients, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So just like I wouldn't decide to remodel my kitchen with zero experience and no knowledge base, wedding planning is really hard if you have no context of what it takes and what needs to be done. And certainly, you know, there are resources out there that can help you. But at the end of the day, I'm going to hire a professional to refinish my cabinets or install my hot water heater. And there's a reason that you would hire a professional to plan your wedding day too.
Absolutely. Well, and if you go into a project that you don't know, half the time you end up with those issues and you have to go back around and, oh, I didn't put the right paint on the cabinets and I need to sand this off and this wasn't the right finish. And it ends up taking so much more time, so much more stress, and so much more energy.
I think the other thing that people underestimate is like your time is valuable. So could you plan your wedding yourself? Probably, yeah, if you really wanted to. And like that was, you know, what you set your mind to. But your time and your energy and your stress is worth something. So think about, you know, is this how I want to spend my mental and emotional energy leading up to my wedding? Is this how I want to spend my time off of work? Like, and if not, then hire somebody to do it because you won't regret it.
Absolutely. Well, and I feel like wedding planners and even just myself, I get asked a lot of times, like, who's your favorite hairstylist? Those other people in the beauty industry, you know who you know.
Yeah.
And so you probably have a lot of connections where you can meet a bride and say, this person's going to be a good fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We try really hard to match our clients with somebody that fits in their budget, fits their aesthetic, their vibe, their mood board, but also fits their personality and is going to be a good match because I'm not the right planner for every bride out there.
Yeah.
There are great florists that aren't the right fit for every bride out there. And, you know, vice versa, every bride out there is not the right fit for me. So when we have a consultation, they're interviewing me, but I'm also interviewing them because if I allow somebody to hire me that isn't a great fit for me, it's a disservice to both of us.
Right.
So the same goes for any other vendor. I'm not going to recommend a makeup artist, a photographer, a rental company that doesn't fit your style, that doesn't fit, you know, who you are as a person, because even if they do fantastic work, it's still not going to resonate in the same way that someone else might.
Absolutely. Do you feel like you work with a particular type of person? Like I know for me, I tend to attract those type A brides who want that well-structured day. But then I talk to other people who are in my industry and they're like, oh no, I get the laid back bride that's just like, oh, you know, whatever. Do you feel like you work with a particular type of person?
Yeah. So we specialize in working with people that come to the Inland Northwest, the Pacific Northwest from somewhere else. So destination clients, but kind of become local to this area, if that makes sense. So we do have some local clients, certainly, but the majority of our clients are planning from elsewhere. And that might be Seattle, California, somewhere like reasonably close. It might be East Coast. We've even had clients as far as Dubai before. So we're no stranger to time changes, navigating things over Zoom and email. So that's definitely kind of where we found our niche. Is Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, the whole Inland Northwest as a destination, and helping to highlight what drew them to this area, what they love about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And especially when someone doesn't have connections in the area, they don't know who to talk to.
Exactly.
And so you're kind of the liaison that puts the pieces together and creates their dream day.
Absolutely. And not only do you not know kind of where to start and who to talk to, but you don't have the opportunity to necessarily sit down with those people and get that FaceTime and kind of feel them out. So you're really relying on that point person to kind of help be the middleman and foster those connections to find you a team that's going to be cohesive.
Absolutely. Well, and I know in previously talking to you, you talked about immersing yourself in your client experience and literally giving them the shirt off your back like you've wiped chairs with your shirt.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So let me preface this by saying that I don't have a great work-life balance. It's one of my biggest struggles. I know that about myself. I deeply love what I do. And so sometimes that results in a lack of boundaries. And as any small business owner knows, it's eternally a struggle. But I so genuinely love what I do and I love my clients and I really do want to make the magic happen for them. And I will do that at the expense of myself. I have like wiped chairs off from a freak rainstorm with my sweater and I have, done all these different things that you could easily say, this is above and beyond. And I don't say that to like brag and say, oh, I'm so wonderful. Like I'll always go above and beyond, but you place a lot of trust in your planner.
Yep.
Perhaps more so than a lot of the other vendors because it's such a process leading up to the day. And I think that's a really big honor. It's really special to me to be a part of such a big moment in someone's life. And I don't take that lightly. So if that means that doing this thing or, running that item over to whoever or picking this up will make that a little bit smoother for you, then I will do it. That's also just the type of person that I am. Doesn't really ever occur to me to say no, for better or for worse. So kind of our unofficial motto is make it work, and we will always do our best to make it work.
Yes. I'm very similar, where I feel like I've just kind of like, you fit yourself. You're kind of like the silly putty that just molds itself into whatever it needs to be to fit whatever container it's in. And
it's a blessing and a curse.
It is.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that work-life balance too, where there's days where it's, I'm like, it's midnight, I should go to bed.
I should consider eating a real meal.
My husband's like, you're still up? And I'm like, yep.
Apparently so.
But I love it. And it's more work to stop than it is to keep going.
I don't think you can work in the event industry without truly deeply loving what you do.
Yeah.
Because it's such a challenging industry. It's so seasonal, especially in an area like this where our summers are fast and furious. It requires so much sacrifice on the vendor's part, giving up weekends with your family, your personal time, and investing so much into your client. And not even to mention like the physical aspect of what we do. You will not be long for this world if you don't truly have the passion behind it. So that makes it really easy and difficult to, kind of struggle with that work-life balance.
Absolutely. Switching gears a little bit, say you book a new client. What is one of the first things that you do with them?
Great question. So first kind of big conversation that we have is kind of like a very invasive first date. I want to get to know who they are, both as individuals and as a couple. What do they love? What's important to them? How did they meet? What's been a theme throughout their relationship? But then let's also talk about the boring fine print. What kind of budget are you working with? Tell me the family situation. Is everybody coming from really far? Do we have half local, half destination? How many people are you thinking? A lot of kids, or no, we don't want kids. Like, let's talk about the nitty gritty because that kind of provides the framework for how we build those pieces out. And then the other piece that I really want to know is, what are your priorities? Because we want to create an event that reflects both the two of you as a couple and as individuals, and everybody's priorities are different. So for some people, that's, we really want to make sure that we can pay for an open bar and a bump and DJ. Like we want a rockin' party. Okay, great. For some people, it's, I really want the beautiful details. I want the elaborate florals. I want like a show-stopping wow factor. Okay, let's make that happen. So when I go into the planning process and I say, here's our budget, that works out to about this much per head. We know we want to put a little more money into that open bar or into the florals. So where can we kind of cut back in other areas that maybe are less important to that client to accommodate that priority? So I want to know, like right off the bat, what are those priorities? What are those things that maybe you don't feel like are as important? And how can we kind of keep that in mind as we move forward with the planning process?
Absolutely. Do you feel like there have been not necessarily like funny requests along the way, but sometimes you'll see those kids' birthday parties with the petting zoo and the random thing? Like, have there been little tidbits that people have added to their wedding that you wouldn't typically find? For sure. There's always like a live animal request somewhere in there, which is such a gamble. Sometimes I have people that have these ideas or these things that they've seen on Instagram that in theory are awesome, but in actuality are maybe not realistic. Yeah.
And so maybe the idea isn't even like that wild and crazy, But I have to kind of say, let's look at it from your guest perspective, or let's look at it in how is this realistically going to flow, and point out, hey, maybe this won't work, or maybe we could make it work this way. So I think in general, most of the requests that my couples have are not necessarily like out of left field. Oh my God, that's so crazy. More of how can we tweak that to make it work for you? Because as we all know, not everything that you see on social media is
feasible
as it's presented, feasible. Exactly. So sometimes they see these things and they're like, I love this idea. And I'm like, okay, well, we can do it, but you're going to spend this amount and we have to think about this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So
that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I love that you are able to craft it to make it work versus being like, no. And I'm sure there would be that,
Sometimes there's that gut instinct where they're like, can we do this? And I'm like, no, we can't.
We cannot.
But we always can. The question is, are you willing to pay for it? Are you willing to work it into your day? Are you willing to think about the logistics? And all of those other things that'll impact. So, and sometimes I feel like it feels kind of like I'm being the Debbie Downer. Like I'm constantly like, okay, but let's think about this. Okay, but let's think about this. And it's like, God, I'm just squashing everything. But that's part of my job is to make sure that, if you want to do a grand exit where 50 guests spray you with champagne, you're thinking about the fact that you're buying 50 bottles of champagne that's going to not be drank.
Yeah.
People are going to be drunk. So, how are we going to manage that? And are we having proper lighting to get the photos you want and all these other things? So I think sometimes the planner has the role of kind of being that voice of reason. And I never want to feel like a downer to my clients, but I also want to educate you and, what you're asking and how that works in real life, if that makes sense.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, it's like if my kid put on a flying squirrel costume, I was like, can I jump off the roof? Like that's a great fantasy.
Right.
But how about we jump on the trampoline instead?
Exactly. Like, sure, you could, you can do
Let's
anything.
think about the ER bill.
Do you want to go to the hospital? Do you want to be very sad afterward? Probably not. So here's how we can give you that same feeling, that same concept in a way that doesn't make me want to scream, and is safer for our home or whatever that situation is.
Absolutely. Well, and with the champagne exit, think about the fact that your dress is going to be
soaking wet.
And
you're now going to get into, wet. Exactly. You're going to get into your limo or your shuttle or whatever, and you're going to be covered in sticky champagne.
Yeah.
And if you don't care, great. Like power to you. I will make it happen. But I want you to think about that and make sure that you're making like an educated decision.
Yeah. And it's not the afterthought of, oh, snap.
Right. Gosh, I wish somebody had pointed out to me that I was going to be dripping wet.
Yeah. I didn't bring a towel. Oops.
Yeah. Shoot.
No big deal. So kind of in the idea of a planning and vendors, a bride is planning her wedding. In your opinion, are there some things that are non-negotiable, like skeleton aspects of a day that are must-haves?
I think that's a good question because a lot of times one of the first conversations that I have with brides, like I said, is budget. And they say, well, I don't know because I've never planned a wedding before. So what's an average budget? And it's almost impossible to answer that question because it depends on so many factors. So the clients that we work with, we highly recommend at least $300 per head in order to do the work that you see on our portfolio, you see on our website that you're hiring us for. That's kind of the budget that comes with that.
Yes.
Now, does that mean that we absolutely won't work with somebody that has a lower budget than that, or that your wedding is going to be trash if you have a lower budget? No, of course not. You can have a beautiful wedding at any price point. It just means if you're hiring me for what you're seeing that I'm putting out there, you can probably expect to spend this much. And so with that, okay, you're going to invest $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 into a day. You're probably coming from somewhere else, which means at least some amount of your guests are coming from somewhere else. There are some things that come as kind of a non-negotiable. You have to feed your guests. And I'm not talking about like, oh, we're going to do heavy apps. You have to feed them dinner. Or if you're getting married in the morning, you have to feed them brunch or, whatever. You can't ask people to invest the money into traveling, invest the time, give that to you and then be like, oh, we're just going to have past apps.
Yeah.
No, you got to feed them. And so what that looks like to you can, we can do it lots of different ways. Maybe we have a multi-course meal. Maybe we are just doing dinner or, but you have to have, it has to be comfortable for guests because it is your day, but it's also an event that you're hosting. I think the other thing that I feel like is a non-negotiable is really good photos. So often in this industry, we hear, well, my aunt does some flowers on the side, or my sister's really good at makeup, so she's just going to do my makeup. And you know what? If that's really your jam and like you really want to include your sister in that way and honor her in that way, great. I'm never going to tell you like, no, absolutely not. I will recommend that you always hire professional vendors for a multitude of reasons. But if you're like dead set on, no, I really want my aunt to do the flowers, great. Then let's work with Auntie Beth. But when it comes to photos, 30 years down the road, you might not remember what you served or that your lipstick was red versus pink or that you had daisies and not roses or whatever. But you will have the photos. And those are the photos that you show your children and your friends and hopefully eventually your grandchildren. And that's something that you can't recreate. You can't get that back. So I believe very strongly that you should, and there are great photographers in every price point, every budget kind of facet, if you will. But that's one area where I really will tell my clients, like, no, you can't have your friend do this because you'll regret it. Like you need to have a professional that knows what it takes to capture the day, because that is what honors every other vendor's individual work that goes into it and what comes together. Like, you pull out those photos and you say, oh, I do remember that I had daisies and not roses. And I do remember that I wore red lipstick or whatever it is because you have the photos. So I think that that's a really important piece as well. Absolutely.
And I know in my client questionnaire, when I'm talking to a client, I always ask them, like, why are you thinking about hiring a professional versus having a friend or family member do it? And usually it's because like, well, I don't want the drama. I don't want to navigate that relationship and the whole host of other things that goes along with it. So I think you're absolutely right when the photographer is a huge point, because that's going to help you recall those memories of the day.
Exactly. And I think that's a great question to ask, because we always tell our clients when I have a consultation with somebody that might hire us or we might work with, I tell them like the driving client experience that I want you to have, that we want to give you at Red Letter, is for you to be a guest at your event, because you put so much time, so much money, so much emotional, mental investment into that single day. And it's so cliche, but it does go by really quickly. Like you blink and it's gone.
Yep.
I want you to be able to enjoy that day in the same way that a guest will. I don't want you to worry about the florist is lost and doesn't know where to load in, or I forgot to get a cake cutting set and what are we going to do? And, whatever. So that's where I come in. I handle those things so that you can sit back and your biggest worry is, hey, I need another glass of champagne. We're going to take photos soon or whatever it is. So that's really the client experience that we want to give our clients. And with that comes a team of professional vendors.
Absolutely. And I know for me, for my goal for my clients is I want you to have a present, relaxed wedding morning. And I have been with those gals who are trying to micromanage everything and they don't have the wedding planner, and this is happening and the cake person is coming in and the flowers and the bridesmaid is coming in saying, where should we put this? And I'm like, you need to have, whether it's a day coordinator or if it's grandma, like an appointed person with the list, with the names and phone numbers of everybody, where the cake is supposed to go, where this is.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have to be micromanaging and then finally relax at 4 p.m.
Right.
Yeah. When your wedding actually starts. Like your wedding day starts in the morning and you don't want to have to wait until the ceremony starts to actually relax.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me sad.
It's hard. And I mean, a lot of times people say, well, I can't afford a planner. Is my wedding going to be awful? No, not necessarily. Like, again, you can have a beautiful wedding at almost any price point. But if I had a nickel for every time I heard, wow, I wish we had hired a planner, I'd have a lot more nickels than every time I heard, we didn't have a planner and it was totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes. Well, and I think I always tell people, and I read a book a while ago, and I was actually just thinking about this morning, where you can make your goals physical and tangible, or you can make them emotional. So you can say, I want this to happen on my wedding day, or you can say, I want to feel this way on my wedding day. And when you make your goals feelings based, your tasks will align with that. So if I wake up every morning and say, I want to be accomplished, well, that's task related. If I want to say I want to feel accomplished, what do I need to do to feel that? So I have brides that say, I want to feel relaxed on my wedding day. Well, what are you going to do to put that in place? Is it something that you're going to do, or are you going to appoint someone else to help you do that?
That's a great perspective.
And so what you do is brides can pay you however much your package price is, and they can set that money aside and say, I'm going to trust Jessica and Red Letter to give me this feeling on my wedding day. And if it means cutting several thousand out of something else in their budget, that's fine. But they know that they're going to go into that day relaxed.
Exactly.
And feeling really good.
That's the goal. Yeah.
And that's worth it.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And every bride has their own differences. I've had those clients that are like, I've wanted to plan my own day since the beginning. And I'm like, you go, girl.
Right.
You plan that day.
Yeah.
But on the day of, make sure you have someone that steps in for you.
Yeah.
That you're not having to put all those little pieces together.
Yeah. And I think it's a common misconception that if you hire a planner, you're not getting to plan your wedding.
Sure.
You're still very much involved. It's your wedding. I'm not just saying, okay, great, I'll see you on the wedding day and you know, we'll surprise you. So you're still very much involved. You still get to do all the fun stuff. You're going cake tasting, you know, you're doing engagement photos, all those things. But at the very least, like if a full service planner isn't in your budget, I think it is worth its weight in gold to have a day of coordinator. Yeah.
Absolutely. When it comes to the wedding day itself and navigating those family relationships, are there some important things a bride should think about when it comes to her wedding day and as far as like the people that are involved?
That's a really good question. So I think as any planner will tell you, we moonlight as therapists. So everybody has family stuff. Like nobody's family is normal and well-adjusted. Yeah. Some might appear more so than others, but they're
lying.
Yeah, exactly. It's fake. So the best thing that you can do is be honest with me and say, hey, my mom is really dead set on we do all the photos after the ceremony, and I really want to do them beforehand, and it's a point of tension. So how can we navigate that? Or my aunt is a little bit of a troublemaker and she's probably going to be, you know, stirring shit up, or this is the groomsman that is going to be drunk before we actually get married. So going into it, knowing those things helps me be one step ahead of how can I navigate this situation? Because I've dealt with lots of different things. Like, trust me, again, everybody's family is bonkers. But if I am caught off guard and I don't know to expect that, you know, your sister is really jealous that you have this beautiful wedding and that's going to alter your dynamic, then that makes it harder for me to kind of get out in front of that and circumvent that so that you can still have that relaxed present day. So I will always recommend, like, be honest and upfront with your planner about what the family dynamic is, both with your family, with your partner's family, everybody together. Even if you don't think that it's like a big deal, you know, okay, my mom is like really disgruntled that we didn't hire my aunt to do flowers, but like, she's probably not going to say anything. Okay, great. Then, but I still have that context and I still know. So the more insight you can give your planner into kind of how that dynamic works, the better we can help mitigate that so that it doesn't affect you negatively on your wedding day.
Yes, that makes total sense, because that's the last thing that you want on your big day.
Absolutely.
Is to be worried about your cousin Mark.
Right.
Who is going to be wasted.
Who's going to have a flask under his jacket and is like ready to go balls to the wall.
Yes.
And you're just hoping for like a beautiful, quiet ceremony.
Yes.
Like,
and you're like,
let me know. Right.
Please behave yourself.
Send me the picture of Uncle Mark so that, if I see that person who looks like he's about to stand up and say, I object, I can perhaps find a way to circumvent that situation.
Yes. This person is for sure going to be in the aisle taking pictures.
Right. Great. Then I know that and I can, find a way around that. So the more I know, the more knowledge I have, the better I can do my job and provide that service to you.
Absolutely. You just have a little black book full of pictures.
For sure.
Open it up. Be like, you.
And a lot of times I can tell who's going to be the troublemaker, especially in a bridal party. Like, because there's always one.
Yeah, there's always
Everybody has that friend, whichever side it's on that you're like, you're going to be the one. And I see them at rehearsal and I get a feel for the dynamic. And I can often tell, like, I'm going to have my eye on you. And I, that only works to my advantage.
Yes. And they always have a sly look. I feel like they're just like.
Because they know. They usually know that they're the troublemaker in the friend group.
They're like, what can I do to derail this event?
How can I make this fun for me? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Like my husband, anytime we sing happy birthday at a birthday party, he's the one that's going, woo, in the background. And I'm like,
take it down. Just like a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's always one.
Yeah. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone looking to hire a wedding planner?
That's a good question. Find somebody that you like really click with, because there are a lot of planners out there that are great, that are fantastic, that are really good at their job and will, do their job incredibly well on your wedding day. But you spend a lot of time with your planner, maybe more so than any other wedding vendor. Those hundreds of hours that I put into planning a wedding, a lot of those are with the client. So you spend a lot of time with that person. You're putting an immense amount of trust in them. And it becomes a really like personal, intimate relationship in a lot of ways. I'm sticking my hand up your dress to bustle it. So like, I hope that you're comfortable with me. So find somebody that you can trust, that you click with, because even if you hire a wonderful planner that does their job impeccably, it's still going to be a lot more fun if you hire a person who also does a wonderful job, but like really gets you and feels like a friend. So, I'm good at my job. Planner B is good at their job. Planner C is good at their job, but I'm still not the right planner for everybody. Like, I'm very sarcastic. I swear a lot. I like to have fun with my clients. I like to have that open dialogue. So if, you are deeply offended by swearing, or you just feel like that's not your vibe, that's okay. I don't have to be the right fit for everybody. Just like every bride is not the right fit for me. So find somebody that not only that you feel you can trust, but that you really click with, because you'll get a lot of emails from them. So you don't want to be annoyed when you see their name in your inbox and you're like, oh God, there they are again.
again.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get to that point anyway, eventually. But hopefully it just takes longer if we have a good rapport than if you're like, I don't like this person from the start.
Yes. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely.
Where can listeners find you online?
Yeah, we're at redlettereventplanning.com or at redletterevent on Instagram. Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. And I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.